Hello, everybody. This is your host of the Sticks and Stones podcast, Marcus, and today we're going over something extremely interesting, in my opinion, and that is the Great Barrier Reef. Scientists a couple months ago discovered a barrier reef that is 500 meters tall. Now, this reef is taller than New York's Empire State Building and the Petronas Twin Towers in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Now, scientists discovered this on a year-long mission and found the structure detached from the Great Barrier Reef off of Cape York in October, I want to say. They were conducting 3D mapping of the seafloor in that area, and a team aboard a research vessel owned by the Schmidt Ocean Institute, or SOI, a non it's a non-profit group based in California, using an underwater robot to explore the reef. Now, the robot known as Sue Bastion, great name by the way, live streamed the video of the discovery in October and posted it to YouTube. If you want to see that, it'll be in the description. Now, the Dr. Joytika Vermani, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm gonna call them Dr. Vermani. They say to find a new half a kilometer tall reef offshore in Cape York area is of the well-recognized Great Barrier Reef shows how mysterious the world is, and just beyond our coastline. This powerful combination of mapping data and underwater imagery will be used to understand the new reef and its role within the incredible Great Barrier Reef World Heritage Area. Now, what that means for you guys that don't really feel like translating it to normal, easier to understand English, basically what they're saying is that they're saying that this technology that we have now will help us understand this barrier reef that's extremely massive, and it'll help us understand how everything works and how it'll go down and all the species and all that. Because as of now, we know that it has over 1,500 species of fish, 411 species of hard corals, and dozens of other species for other things. Uh, that is one of the coolest things I've ever heard in my entire life. Stretching to just over 2,300 kilometers, the reef was designated a World Heritage Site in 1981 for its enormous scientific and intrinsic importance. Now, that is just talking about the Great Barrier Reef in general. We're not talking about the tall one. We've moved into talking about the Great Barrier Reef. Now, but in recent years, it's been pretty roughed up by the warming waters, which has killed off coral and dispersed a lot of other marine life and fish and all that, and sped up the growth of algae and other very bad things. Now, a study earlier in October says that a study earlier in October says that they found all types of corals have suffered decline across the world, especially here though, off the northern tip of Australia in the largest reef system. And the worst fall came after the bleaching event in 2016 and 2017. And more mass bleaching has occurred this year, which has hurt them quite a bit. It's now the researchers say there's no time to lose. We must sharply decrease greenhouse gas emissions ASAP. I agree with that. I totally think we need to decrease the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that we're doing because like it or not, the Earth is getting warmer. And sure, my take on it though is it's not the normal citizen out there that's making the most pollution. As it stands right now, it's all the big industries, it's all the big companies. I think, it's not that I think, I know for a fact Coca-Cola, for I think the third year in a row, is the second biggest air polluter in the world. China and India are responsible for quite a bit of air pollution as well, simply because of how highly populated they are, and with all the industries and factories down there. I would say that if you do want to do something, sure, I suppose you try to do something on yourself, get like an electric car and all that, walk around more, use more public transportation. That could help, but in the long run, what would really help us is if we get these companies and these industries to actually work on making cleaner products. Because with the big industries constantly making and manufacturing and selling and all that, mo- all of the pollution, not all of the pollution, 90% of the pollution that we deal with today is because of those big companies and those big factories out there. One alternative that people talk about a lot is nuclear energy, and that's because nuclear energy is a lot cleaner, even though the word nuclear is scary. I will say that. But nuclear energy seems to have less overall pollution than anything else, and it seems to be cleaner and more sustainable in the long run than fossil fuels, because we are running out of fossil fuels, and once we run out, there won't be any more. Anyways, that was very off topic. Time to go back to this barrier reef. Back to the barrier reef. Scientists say that they found the population had dropped by more than 50% in all coral sizes and species, but especially in branching and table-shaped corals. Now, if you don't know what a table-shaped coral is, well, it's in the name, table-shaped coral. It's not that big of a difference. And by table-shaped, I mean it's usually flatter and wider. It's not actually shaped like a table. Now, these are the biggest structural species that usually provide habitats for fish and other marine life. Now, if you've been to Nemo, they weren't in coral, but they were part of a reef. And yeah, imagine Nemo without his home. If you really want to think about it. So, Professor Terry Hughes, the co-author and a study, uh, said that these types of coral had been the worst affected by the back-to-back mass bleachings that have been going on for the past 4 years. Because it's been going on from 2016 to 2020, so that's quite a long time. Imagine 4 years where someone's just like ridiculously polluting your habitat. Like your house is getting filled with carbon or something. I'm not too good at these metaphors. So, bleaching occurs when corals under stress drive out the algae known as I'm not gonna try to pronounce that. That's gonna be on the screen. Zooxanthellae. They give them color. Corals can recover if they're under normal conditions, but it can take a couple of decades. A study in 2019 found that damaged coral colonies had struggled to regenerate because most adult corals had died. The vibrant adult population that has millions of small baby corals as well as large ones has essentially died out at this point, or it's gonna die out if we don't do something. And like I said, this all goes back to pollution. This all goes back to how we can do that and what we can do. Now, one thing I say we should do is we should most definitely do teach more about the barrier reef. We could definitely talk about it more to students in schools. We could give it more attention than it has already. And I get it. Some people out here are probably really annoyed at the fact that I'm talking about this and I'm saying it needs more attention, but it does. It really, really does. And the idea of all those species of fish, all that coral, all of that sea life just dying out because we were too stupid or too reckless to fix our ways. Not us as people, us as a society, as the group of industries. Those are really the people that are doing the most damage. It's not you or I that are riding in a car or going on a bus. It's the bigger companies. And if we don't really, in my opinion, if we don't pressure them into doing that, then that's gonna well, it's gonna mess up our oceans. And if our oceans get messed up, everything else gets messed up. You don't need me to tell you that. Now, the scientists in Australia say they did find a way to help coral reefs fight the devastating effects of the bleaching by making them more heat resistant. But it's only a matter of time until we can't do that. I mean, I know where I am right now. It's supposed to be winter, and it snowed like a day ago, and it's already all melted. We had like knee-high snow. It's pretty insane. It's just the world is getting warmer by a lot, and it might not seem like a lot because it's only a couple of degrees. It's a lot more than you think because a couple of degrees is really all it takes to make something go way off, and it's crazy like that. It's just it's not a fun idea to have in your brain, and it's really not. That being said, I do hope y'all take this to heart. I hope you guys go out and do more research. If you want, I'll have one or two sources, ways to help, like a donation, like a charity or something, down in the description if you want to go out there and donate some of your hard-earned cash. You don't have to. Just the fact that you're learning about it and reading about it and researching it is more than enough. As long as you're spreading, obviously, the idea of taking care of our world, taking care of our ocean life. But there will be the link to this massive reef that's taller than the Empire State Building. And yeah, that's really about it for today's podcast. I know it's a little bit shorter than the last podcast, but I'm trying out something new. I'm trying out only a single story. I uh, I thought this was extremely important, so I didn't want to muddle it with a positive story in the end. This is something I feel is important, and I will say this: it might be a little bit biased because I think this is important, and I think you should hear about this. But I'm reading this from sources and from studies about the coral reef. I'm not making these things up. And if you want to see those studies, they'll be down in the description below. You can read through them. Yeah, that's really it. Have a great day. Ciao.